the most globalized city on earth in the year 1000. Hello, I'm Valerie Hansen, and I teach world and Chinese history at Yale. And I'm going to be talking about my new book. So let me start by asking where you think this could be. It's a place where people are shopping and they can buy things from Sri Lanka and Africa, perfumes that are the fragrance is preserved from using stabilizers from Tibet and Somalia, things made out of Baltic amber, furniture made out of aromatic wood. The air is filled with the smell of incense. Shops sell high-tech products, but also local versions modified for local consumers. And you can see Hindus and Muslims and Buddhists living in this place. And the wealthy people who live in this city have furniture made from sandalwood from Java, and then also carved rhinoceros horn from Southeast Asia. Well, the answer to where this could be and when it could be is the city of Quanzhou in Fujian in China. It's on the southeast coast in the year 1000. Here's a map showing you where Quanzhou is. We're right across from Taiwan, and it's where I was going to say it's about halfway between Shanghai is up the coast to the north, and Hong Kong is to the south, west, below Fujian. And Quanzhou, you can see this is what the city looks like. Has two very famous Buddhist pagodas, and this temple was founded in 713. These pagodas are not that old, but the temple complex goes back that far. So there's a Buddhist temple, and there's a Confucian temple. This is a more modern building, but it has inscriptions telling us that the Confucius temple goes back to the late 900s. But unlike other Chinese cities, which also have Buddhist monasteries and Chinese temples, Quanzhou has a mosque that was built in 1009 to 1010. It was renovated in 1310. And we know that because this inscription tells us that. It's in Arabic, and it gives us the founding date of the mosque. If we go through, this is on the outside, on the street entrance to the mosque. If we go through into the door, we can see the interior of the mosque, which looks like this today. In the beginning, I told you that there were Muslims living in the city. There are also Hindus, and this is the Maritime Museum in Quanzhou, and this is the entranceway to it. And in it, this is the evidence for the Hindu worship. This is a Hindu statue, a statue of a Hindu deity, Vishnu, found in 1934. What's particularly interesting is that the statue was not finished. It was being made. So we know that there was a workshop where they made statues like this for local temples. We also have textual evidence telling us that there were Hindu temples in Quanzhou in the 980s and 990s. And then this is interesting because it's about half a meter high. It's a carved stone in the shape of an Indian temple, and it gives us a sense of what these temples might have looked like, a very impressionistic sense. You'll see that the architects put a dragon, so they were influenced by Chinese art, and put a dragon on the temple roof, because Chinese temples always have dragons. So the city's population, we know, was diverse. We know that because we've got these mosques and the Hindu temples, but we also have textual evidence telling us that there were two kinds of foreigners, dark and light. I can't explain that except to tell you that means that there were a variety of people who came from these are people from South Asia, Southeast Asia, possibly Africa. We know that the population was less than 1 million in the year 1000, just to give you a frame of reference. Paris was 20 or 30,000 people at that time. The Chinese capital of Kaifeng was probably over 1 million. It might have been 1.5 million. Experts disagree. And then the population of Quanzhou reached 1 million in 1080, and then it reached 1.25 million in 1240. So this is a large city. Quanzhou was a major city for trade, and China was exporting textiles, high-fired ceramics, like this one type is called Blanc de Chine, makes perfect sense, white from China, and it was increasingly popular after 1000. They were also the Chinese were exporting metals, like unprocessed cylinders and ingots, processed goods such as iron cauldrons, woks, and mirrors. I'm going to show you some pictures from a visit I took to a kiln in the mountains of Fujian. So on the interior of Fujian, this was in 2016. And you can see this is called a dragon kiln because the shape of the kiln goes up. It goes up and down with the contour of the earth, but mostly up along the edge of a hill. And these could be as long as a kilometer. And this allowed the kiln to attain very high temperatures, the structure of kiln. This is the interior of the kiln, and you can see that this kiln dates back to the Song Dynasty. It's been in use for 1,000 years. It's still working in 2016, and these are dots of glaze on the walls of the kiln. And then these are the pots that are these are containers to hold the ceramics. They're making actually white ceramics, just like the one I showed you, the Blanc de Chine. So these Chinese ceramics were exported from Guangzhou, is Canton. Historically, it was called Canton. Quanzhou is a little bit to the north. And these were exported. Chinese ceramics have been found all along these trade routes. This is through the Straits of Malacca. This one, the white line, was much less typical to go around Indonesia and not go through the Straits of Malacca. One route was hugged the shore. The other route crossed from Indonesia to straight across the ocean to Sri Lanka, and then hugged the west coast of India until arriving at Basra, which was the port for East Africa. And there was another route that went all the way south to Madagascar, along the East African coast. Archaeologists have found this is another Blanc de Chine vessel, and this is called Qingbai porcelain. Has a pale blue grayish green glaze, but these are all examples of ceramics that have been found on the East African coast in modern Tanzania in a site called Kilwa. And this is the research of a French scholar, or a scholar based in France, named Bing Zhao. Her last name is Zhao. After the white pottery was so popular, the Chinese shifted to producing celadons, and these were also a very popular export item. So that's the exports. The imports were all these aromatic goods. This is a picture from the Qingming Scroll, which shows a city somewhere in China. I don't think it's a specific city. It's probably somewhere in North China, but it shows us an incense shop. This is the Chinese character for xiang, and this was a catch-all term that referred to fragrant woods like sandalwood. It also referred to ambergris and musk. These are the perfume fixatives that I mentioned at the beginning from Tibet. The musk is from Tibet, and ambergris is a substance excreted by a whale intestines. This is also from the Qingming Scroll, and the sign on the shop says, you can read it here, but it names the 3 kinds of wood that the shop sells, and these are all imported goods. And the Song China imported vast quantities of these aromatics. So that was the import, and then their exports were the ceramics and the metal goods and the textiles. So in what sense can we say globalization began in the year 1000? There's all over the world, there's new systems of global pathways. One of the things that happens in the year 1000 is the Vikings arrive in northeastern Canada. We've got anti-globalization riots. They're directed against foreign merchants in China, in Cairo, and in Constantinople. There's a huge slave trade. Most of the slaves are being traded to the Islamic world, um, but there are over 10 million people who are forced to leave their homes in Africa and Eastern Europe and Central Asia and move to the Islamic world. This is long before the transatlantic trade begins. Um, and one of the things that happens in the year 1000, because there's so much movement around the world, is that rulers learn about the religions of their neighbors, and a lot of these rulers convert to a new religion. Uh, I've been talking a lot about globalized trade. So we have local potters in the Middle East are forced to compete with Chinese producers for market share. The people who worked in Chinese kilns, like the Yueji kiln I showed you, were working full time. And in Chinese enterprises that mass produced export goods in large quantities, thousands of pots in a single firing. Um, and in the same way that Chinese workers were affected, so were the people living in Southeast Asia. They didn't start working in factories. There's no electricity yet. There's no industrialization. But they give up their traditional livelihoods and their ways of life so that they can collect the goods that the Chinese collect the goods or cut down the trees that the Chinese desire, so they can sell them there. So in that sense, I think in that sense, we can say that globalization dates to the year 1000, and that Trenzhou was the world's most globalized place. Thank you.